Winter prep isn't glamorous. It's quiet work, stacking firewood straight, sealing grain barrels, labeling fuel cans, and double-checking lists while the rest of the neighborhood obsesses over holiday lights and matching mailboxes. I'd lived on my lakeside property for less than 3 months, but I already knew one thing for certain: the HOA didn't like me. My land sat just uphill from their luxury homes, technically outside the HOA boundary, but close enough to offend their sense of control. The spillway and reservoir above them had been there longer than any of their marble kitchens or imported palm trees, but they treated it like scenery, something permanent and harmless. Karen didn't. She introduced herself with a clipboard and a smile that never reached her eyes. She talked about community standards of visual harmony and how my neatly stacked winter stockpile was an eyesore visible from the lake trail. I calmly explained it was on my land, permitted, and necessary. I even showed her the paperwork. She waved it away. 2 days later, while I was in town, my phone exploded with messages: smoke, sirens, fire trucks. By the time I got back, my winter stockpile was gone, reduced to blackened ground and drifting ash. Karen stood nearby with 2 HOA board members, nodding solemnly as if they'd done the community a favor. It violated HOA codes, she said crisply. We had it removed. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I just asked one question. Did you notify the county? Her pause was almost invisible, but it was there. I spent the next week cold, busy, and silent. Insurance claims moved slowly. The HOA ignored my lawyer's letter. Karen sent a smug email reminding me that a cooperation builds harmony. Meanwhile, the weather changed. The rain didn't come all at once. It crept in day after day of gray skies, saturated soil, and rising water levels. Local news started using words like unprecedented and historic. The reservoir climbed higher than I'd seen it before. That's when the calls began. First, a county official asking routine questions, then an engineer, then emergency management. They weren't panicking, but they were paying attention. Buried in decades-old records was a clause no one in the OA had bothered to read. During specific conditions, oversight of the spillway reverted to the original land parcel owner. Me. Karen showed up again, this time without the smile. We need you to coordinate with us, she said. Closing the spillway protects the neighborhood. I didn't argue. I didn't remind her about the fire. I simply told her I would follow the law and emergency guidance exactly. She left furious. That night, the rain intensified. The lake swelled. Sirens echoed faintly in the distance, not for the HOA, miles away. I stood by my window, listening to the wind, thinking about ashes blowing across my land. About how preparation had been called an eyesore. About how warnings were dismissed. By morning, the situation had escalated, and the decision one Karen thought she controlled was no longer theoretical. The emergency notice came just before dawn. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just a calm official message outlining thresholds, risks, and legal responsibilities. The reservoir had crossed a level where controlled release was no longer optional. It was required. I followed procedure. Documented everything. Spoke with officials, logged times and conditions. No anger, no speeches, just compliance. When the spillway opened, it wasn't sudden or violent. It was steady, relentless. Water doing exactly what water has always done. Moving downhill, obeying gravity, ignoring status. The HOA neighborhood woke up to confusion first. Streets glistened where they shouldn't. Decorative ponds overflowed. Basements dampened. Lawns turned spongy. Then came panic. Karen's calls went unanswered, not because I blocked her, but because my phone was tied up with emergency coordination. But she eventually showed up at my gate, shouting over the rain, demanding I affix this. I didn't come outside. By afternoon, luxury became liability. Cars stalled. Ground floors flooded. Residents scrambled to move valuables upstairs, suddenly aware that living below a reservoir carried consequence. News vans arrived, not for drama, but for facts. Reporters asked questions the HOA couldn't answer. Why were homes built there? Who approved the development? Why were warnings ignored? Records surfaced. Emails, meeting notes, and then the fire came up. The burned winter stock. The unauthorized action, the lack of permits, the missing notifications. Public sympathy shifted fast. By the time the rain eased, the damage was done, not catastrophic, but undeniable. The HOA faced investigations, lawsuits, and fines. Insurance companies asked uncomfortable questions. Karen resigned within a week. No apology came. None was needed. I rebuilt slowly. Better storage. Covered, protected, approved. The county worked with me this time. So did neighbors, those willing to learn. The spillway returned to silence. The reservoir settled back into stillness. And every time I pass that blackened patch of ground where my winter prep once stood, I'm reminded of a simple truth. Fire destroys what people need to survive. Water reveals what people chose to ignore. Karma doesn't rush. It just waits for the right conditions.